In the stories passed down from ancient Greece, night wasn't simply what happened when the sun went away. It was something real, something that moved and breathed through the world. The Greeks called her Nyx, and they spoke of her as one of the oldest beings in existence, born from the very beginning of everything. When evening came, it wasn't just shadows filling empty spaces. Night arrived like a presence, spreading her dark veil across the sky. She brought with her a whole family of experiences that only existed in her domain. Sleep was her child, and so were dreams. Even death was said to be her son, walking quietly through her darkened hours. The Greeks understood something we sometimes forget in our well-lit world. They saw that darkness had its own weight, its own character. Night could be gentle, bringing rest to tired bodies and quiet to busy minds. But she could also be fierce, hiding dangers and mysteries in her folds. She was neither good nor evil. She simply was, and in being she shaped half of all existence, as vital and necessary as her bright counterpart the day. In the beginning, before the world took shape, there was only chaos of vast, formless void where nothing had definition or boundary. From this primordial emptiness emerged Nyx, the goddess of night. She came into being without parents in the traditional sense, arising spontaneously from the darkness itself. Nyx was among the very first beings to exist, older than the earth, older than the sky, older than the gods who would later rule from Mount Olympus. Her essence was the night itself, not merely darkness, but the velvet blackness that wraps around all things when the sun disappears. She embodied the quiet hours when the world rests, when shadows stretch long and deep. The Greeks who told her stories understood her power. Even Zeus, who would become king of the gods, treated Nyx with careful respect. Her domain was absolute every evening. She drew her dark veil across the sky, bringing rest to mortals and immortals alike. In her wake came sleep, dreams, and all the strange territories that exist between sunset and dawn. She was darkness personified, yet not evil or frightening, simply inevitable, like the turning of day into night. In the earliest stories told by the Greeks, darkness came first. Not just any darkness, but Nyx the night itself, given form and presence. She emerged from chaos when the universe was still finding its shape, long before the earth had mountains or the sky held stars. The genealogies written by poets place her at the very beginning of things, when Gaia, the earth, was still forming herself from the void. Nyx was already there. When Uranus stretched himself across as the sky, she had been moving through existence for ages uncounted. The Titans would come later. Kronos and his siblings, powerful as they were, arrived in a world where Nyx had already established her domain. Even Zeus, who would one day rule from Olympus with his lightning bolts, belonged to a much younger generation. His grandparents, the Titans, were themselves newcomers compared to Nyx. In the divine hierarchy that the Greeks carefully mapped, she stood near the very root of the family tree, a primordial force that preceded the more familiar pantheon. The night existed before there were gods to rule the day, before there were titans to shape the world, before there was much of anything at all except the first stirrings of existence. In the earliest Greek stories, before the Olympians ruled from their mountain throne, there was Nyx. She was night itself, born from the primordial void when the universe was still taking shape. Her domain stretched across the entire cosmos whenever the sun disappeared below the horizon. The poets wrote about her dark robes that swept across the sky, bringing sleep and dreams to mortals below. She lived in a cave at the edge of the world, where shadows gathered like children around their mother. From this place, she sent forth her offspring's sleep, death, dreams, and strife, she night to do their work among humans and gods alike. Even Zeus, who commanded thunder and ruled over all the other deities, would step carefully around Nyx. In Homer's Iliad, when Zeus grew angry at Sleep for helping Hera trick him, he chased the minor god across the heavens. But when Sleep fled to his mother Nyx for protection, Zeus stopped his pursuit immediately. The king of the gods turned away rather than risk angering Night herself. This wasn't mere respect, it was genuine wariness of her power. Where Zeus ruled through force and politics, Nyx's authority came from being one of the first beings to exist. Older than the earth, older than the sky. The Greeks lived with night differently than we do. When darkness fell across their hills and harbors, it wasn't simply the absence of day. Night was its own presence, something that arrived with weight and substance. They called her Nyx, and in their stories, she was among the first beings to exist, older than Zeus himself. Even the king of the gods kept his distance from her. The stories tell of times when Zeus held back his thunder rather than anger Night. This wasn't mere superstition. It reflected something the Greeks understood about darkness that electric lights have helped us forget. Night changes things. Voices carry differently. Familiar paths become strange. The mind works in different patterns when the sun disappears. They built their days knowing night would come. No amount of oil in their lamps could hold it back completely. This wasn't defeat but recognition. Some forces in life simply are. The tide pulls whether you acknowledge it or not. Winter arrives on its own schedule, and night comes when it comes, bringing its own rules, its own possibilities, its own particular silence that makes even the smallest flame seem precious. In the earliest Greek stories, Nyx stood alone in the darkness and brought forth her children without any companion. These weren't ordinary offspring. Each one emerged as a living force that would shape the very nature of existence. First came Hemera the day, who would forever chase away her mother's darkness each morning. Then Ether arrived, the bright upper air where the gods would one day dwell. But Nyx's children weren't all gentle presences. She gave birth to Moros, inevitable doom, and his siblings Thanatos, peaceful death, and Kur, violent destruction. The Moirai emerged too, those three sisters, who would spin, measure, and cut the thread of every mortal life. Clotho would spin the thread, Lachesis would measure its length, and Atropos would make the final cut. Even the gods would learn to fear their power. Hypnos drifted forth as Sleep, bringing rest to weary minds. His brother Onaro became Dreams, taking countless forms to visit sleepers. Among her darker children were Eris, who delighted in discord, and Nemesis, who balanced the scales of justice with retribution. Each child embodied a force that mortals would encounter. Forces that even now touch our lives in ways we might recognize. In Greek mythology, 4 siblings shared the same mother and father. Night and darkness, sleep and death were brothers. Twins actually, though one was gentler than the other. Sleep would visit mortals each night, bringing rest and dreams, while death came only once, leading souls to their final destination. Their sisters were equally powerful. Fate wove the threads of every life, determining when each person would meet either brother. She worked quietly, her decisions absolute and unchangeable. Conflict, the 4th sibling, stirred discord wherever she went, setting mortals against each other in battles both large and small. The Greeks saw these four as a family because they understood something about human existence. Sleep was the daily practice for death. Conflict shaped the paths that fate had already drawn. Death and fate worked together, one ending what the other had begun. Even sleep could bring conflict through nightmares. While conflict often hastened meetings with death, they lived together in the darkest part of the underworld, in a cave where no sunlight reached. From there, they would emerge each day and night to perform their duties among mortals, forever bound by blood and purpose. The people of that time lived with these forces woven through every part of their days. When they woke each morning, death walked beside them in the drought that threatened their crops. Birth appeared in the green shoots, pushing through cracked earth after the first rain. Creation showed itself in the clay vessels they shaped with their hands, while destruction arrived with the storms that could wash away a season's work. These weren't abstract concepts discussed by scholars in distant temples. A farmer understood them through the rhythm of planting and harvest. A mother knew them through bringing children into the world and watching elders leave it. Even in the marketplace, merchants saw these forces at work, new goods arriving as old ones spoiled. Fortunes built while others crumbled. Death wasn't the end of a story, but part of its telling. Birth wasn't just a beginning, but a continuation. The flood that destroyed also brought the rich soil that would feed next year's crops. The fire that consumed dead brush cleared space for new growth. In this way, each force contained its opposite, like seeds holding both the memory of the parent plant and the promise of what would come. Nyx had many children, and each one governed something that touches every human life. Sleep and death, dreams and old age, pain and deception. These weren't random forces scattered through the world. They were her offspring, given form and purpose. Thanatos brought peaceful death, while his twin Hypnos brought sleep. Every night Hypnos would sweep across the earth, carrying his gift to tired bodies. The Onari, the dream spirits, followed close behind, slipping through gates of horn and ivory to deliver their visions. Some dreams told truth, others spun beautiful lies. Geras hobbled forward as old age, inevitable and patient. Nemesis balanced the scales of fortune, ensuring no life stayed too sweet or too bitter forever. The Moirai, those three sisters of fate, spun, measured, and cut the thread of every mortal existence. Even the darker children had their place. Epet whispered deceptions that sometimes protected, sometimes destroyed. Oases brought misery, but through suffering came understanding. The Karaf spirits of violent death claimed those whose time came suddenly. These weren't punishments from angry gods. They were simply the texture of being alive, the experiences that no one, king or beggar, could escape. Nyx's children made mortality what it was: finite, fragile, and strangely beautiful. In the earliest days of human storytelling, sleep and death lived as siblings in the same tales. The Greeks called sleep Hypnos and death Thanatos, twin brothers born from the night. They walked similar paths through human lives, one visiting each evening, the other arriving just once. The connection made sense to our ancestors. A sleeping person lies still, their breath shallow, their skin cool to the touch. They don't respond when called. They exist somewhere else entirely, in a place the waking cannot reach. Death looked much the same, only the sleeper never returned, with stories of where they'd been. This resemblance shaped rituals across the world. Egyptian tombs contained beds alongside provisions for the afterlife. Norse warriors spoke of death as the final sleep, where heroes would rest in golden halls. Even our modern language carries these old connections. We speak of eternal rest, of being laid to sleep, of passing peacefully in the night. The boundary between sleep and death felt thin to those who watched loved ones drift away each evening, trusting they would return with the dawn. Hypnos lived in a cave where no light could reach, deep beneath the earth where the river Lethe flowed. The Greeks knew him as the god of sleep, brother to Thanatos, who ruled over death, while his brother wore dark robes and carried souls away. Hypnos moved through the world on silent wings, bringing rest to weary mortals. The ancient Greeks depicted him as a gentle youth with wings sprouting from his temples or shoulders. In some stories, he carried a horn filled with sleep-inducing poppy juice. In others, he held a branch that dripped the waters of forgetfulness. Artists carved his likeness into funeral monuments, showing him as a winged boy leaning on an inverted torch, the flame extinguished like consciousness at day's end. His mother was Nyx, the goddess of night, and together they brought darkness and dreams to the world. Even Zeus, king of the gods, could fall under Hypnos' spell. The stories tell of Hera convincing Hypnos to put Zeus to sleep so she could interfere in the Trojan War without her husband's knowledge. Such was the power of sleep that even the mightiest immortal could not resist its pull. In the darkness before time had meaning, Nyx gave birth to many children. Some brought terror to the world, death with his cold touch, discord with her bitter whispers. But among them was Hypnos, and he was different. Where his siblings carried sharp edges and harsh voices, he moved like mist across still water. The ancient Greeks knew him as the god of sleep, though he was nothing like the fierce deities who demanded temples and sacrifice. Hypnos lived in a cave where the river Lethe flowed, its waters carrying forgetfulness. No sunlight reached this place, no roosters crowed, no dogs barked. Poppies grew wild at the entrance, their heads heavy with the promise of rest. He had wings, they said, not the powerful wings of eagles or hawks, but soft feathered things that made no sound as he flew through the night. When he touched mortals, it was with kindness. Even the mightiest warriors would yield to him without struggle, their swords falling from loosened fingers as peaceful sleep took hold. His mother Nyx ruled the night with all its terrors, but Hypnos brought only quiet relief to weary souls. In Greek art and sculpture, Hypnos appeared as a gentle figure with wings sprouting from his shoulders or temples. These weren't the powerful wings of eagles or the delicate wings of butterflies, but something softer feathered appendages that seemed to barely disturb the air around them. The ancient Greeks understood sleep as a kind of flight, a journey that carried mortals away from the waking world each night. Some pottery fragments show him hovering just above sleeping figures, his wings spread wide but motionless, as if suspended in the quiet air of bedchambers. The Romans later adopted this imagery, and their god Somnus inherited the same ethereal wings. Even today, when archaeologists uncover these ancient depictions, the wings remain one of the most recognizable features, a visual reminder that sleep was once thought to arrive on silent feathers. Core idea: Hypnos' wings symbolized effortless and quiet arrival. In Greek mythology, Hypnos moved through the night on silent wings. The god of sleep didn't announce his presence with thunder or divine light. Instead, he arrived as softly as evening shadows lengthening across a room. His wings carried him from house to house, from village to village, bringing rest to those who needed it most. The Greeks understood something about the nature of sleep when they gave their sleep god wings. Not the powerful wings of an eagle or the swift wings of a messenger, but wings that moved without sound, without disturbing even the lightest sleeper. These wings represented the gentle transition from waking to sleeping, that moment when consciousness begins to fade and the mind releases its grip on the day. Artists depicted Hypnos with these wings spread wide, not in flight but in embrace. The feathers suggested both movement and stillness, the paradox of sleep itself, where the body rests while the mind journeys. His arrival was never forced or sudden. Like sleep itself, Hypnos came when resistance ended, when breathing deepened, when thoughts began to drift like leaves on still water. In the ancient Greek world, the god of sleep moved through twilight spaces with a particular companion. Hypnos carried a branch heavy with poppies, those papery red flowers that would become forever linked with drowsiness and dreams. The connection wasn't arbitrary. Greek farmers noticed how these flowers seemed to make the air itself heavy with sleep, how their seed pods leaked a milky substance that brought deep rest to those who consumed it. The image appears again and again in pottery and sculpture. There's Hypnos' wings folded at his temples, holding his flowering branch like a gentle wand. Sometimes the poppies droop from his hand, their heads nodding as if already surrendering to their own power. Artists understood something essential about this pairing. The way sleep arrives not as conquest but as offering, extended on a stem. The Greeks saw divinity in natural things. A flower that could bring sleep must surely belong to the god who ruled that realm. So Hypnos walked with his poppies through myth and art, touching mortals with petals that promised rest, carrying nature's own invitation to close one's eyes and drift away. The poppy's connection to sleep runs deeper than its modern pharmaceutical uses. In fields across the ancient Mediterranean, these delicate flowers swayed in the breeze, their papery petals catching the light. People noticed something peculiar about the milky sap that bled from broken stems. It brought drowsiness, a gentle pull toward unconsciousness. Greek farmers would find Demeter's statues adorned with poppies, the goddess of harvest crowned with the same flowers that grew wild between their wheat rows. The association wasn't accidental. Poppies thrived in disturbed soil, sprouting wherever grain was cultivated. Their presence in the fields became intertwined with the cycles of growth and rest, work and sleep. The flower's power extended beyond simple drowsiness. Those who consumed preparations from the poppy found their memories softening at the edges, recent troubles dissolving like morning mist. This forgetting wasn't seen as loss, but as mercy, a temporary release from grief or pain. Roman physicians documented these effects carefully, noting how the poppy could ease both physical suffering and the weight of difficult memories. Even in death, poppies appeared. Mourners placed the flowers on graves, believing they might grant peaceful sleep to the departed, free from the burdens they carried in life. The Greek gods were known for their demands. Zeus required burnt offerings that filled the sky with smoke. Poseidon expected sailors to throw gold coins into the waves before long journeys. Even gentle Demeter asked for the first fruits of every harvest. But Hypnos, the god of sleep, wanted nothing from the mortals who visited his realm each night. While other deities built grand temples, where priests collected tributes, Hypnos dwelt in a quiet cave where the river Lethe flowed. No altars stood at its entrance. No priests waited with outstretched hands. The god who guided every living thing into sleep asked for no payment, no prayers, no blood spilled on marble stones. This absence of demands made Hypnos unique among the Olympians, where Ares fed on the violence of war and Aphrodite thrived on lovers' passion. Hypnos simply existed, offering his gift freely. Rich or poor, young or old, faithful or skeptical. All received the same gentle touch when darkness fell. The merchant who hoarded gold slept as deeply as the beggar who had nothing to give. In Hypnos's realm, wealth meant nothing, and poverty was no barrier to rest. In the world of Greek mythology, where gods often wielded their power through fear and punishment, Hypnos stood apart. He was the god of sleep, and unlike many of his divine counterparts, he carried no thunderbolts, no instruments of torture, no desire for revenge. His nature was gentleness itself. When mortals spoke of Hypnos in their prayers and stories, they described a figure who brought relief rather than retribution. He didn't arrive to settle scores or teach harsh lessons. Instead, he came as a friend to the weary, offering the simple gift of rest. His presence meant the end of pain for the night, the quieting of troubled thoughts, the soft dissolution of the day's burdens. The Greeks understood something essential about sleep through their conception of Hypnos. They saw it not as a small death or a stealing away of life, but as a kindness extended to all living things. Rich or poor, young or old, everyone received his visit without judgment. He played no favorites and held no grudges. In a pantheon filled with jealous and vengeful deities, Hypnos remained uniquely benevolent, touching each sleeper with the same gentle hand that brought peace without price. The Greeks understood something essential about sleep through their conception of Hypnos. They saw it not as a small death or a stealing away of life, but as a kindness extended to all living things. Rich or poor, young or old, everyone received his visit without judgment. He played no favorites and held no grudges. In a pantheon filled with jealous and vengeful deities, Hypnos remained uniquely benevolent, touching each sleeper with the same gentle hand that brought peace without price. In the old desert kingdoms, sleep held a place of honor. While warriors trained and merchants traded under the scorching sun, the afternoon rest was sacred time. Even the most powerful rulers would retreat to shaded chambers when the heat grew too intense. They understood something we've forgotten, that sleep wasn't surrender, but renewal. The temples kept this wisdom alive through their practices. Priests would sleep in special chambers, believing their dreams brought messages from higher realms. They recorded these visions on papyrus, treating them as carefully as any royal decree. Sleep wasn't just physical rest. It was communion with something greater than themselves. This belief shaped entire civilizations. Cities designed their buildings with sleeping quarters facing specific directions. Markets closed during the hottest hours, not from laziness but from respect for the body's natural rhythms. Even soldiers preparing for battle would ensure proper rest, knowing that exhaustion was the true enemy. The ancient texts speak of sleep as a bridge between worlds. Where we see unconsciousness, they saw opportunity. Where we fight to stay productive, they embraced the cycles of rest and waking as naturally as the moon follows the sun. In the quiet hours when darkness settled over ancient Greece, people spoke of a gentle visitor who moved through every home and field. They called him Hypnos, the god of sleep, and believed he traveled the world each night with his twin brother Thanatos, the god of death. While Thanatos came only once to each life, Hypnos returned faithfully, night after night. The Greeks pictured him with dark wings that made no sound as he flew from house to house, carrying a horn filled with sleep-inducing poppy juice. Some said he held a branch that dripped the waters of forgetfulness from the river Lethe. No lock could keep him out, no prayer could turn him away. From the smallest mouse in the field to the mightiest king in his palace, all received his visit. Parents would tell their children that Hypnos was already on his way, moving closer with each breath of wind against the shutters. The poets wrote that even Zeus himself could not resist when Hypnos drew near. This wasn't seen as weakness, but as proof of a fundamental truth: that sleep belonged to everyone, regardless of their station or power in the waking world. In the quiet corners of Greek temples, where incense smoke drifted through marble columns, priests spoke of how Hypnos touched all living things. His reach extended far beyond human dreams, flowing through forests and fields where creatures of every kind surrendered to his gentle pull. The shepherds watching their flocks knew this well. They saw how sheep would settle into the grass as evening approached, their breathing becoming slow and rhythmic. Even the most restless lamb would eventually close its eyes, drawn into the same peaceful state that claimed their human guardians. Birds tucked their heads beneath their wings in the branches above, while field mice curled into their burrows below. Greek farmers noticed how their oxen would stand perfectly still in the fields at dusk, heads lowering gradually as if an invisible hand was guiding them toward rest. Dogs by the hearth would circle once, twice, then sink into deep slumber beside the dying fire. The Greeks understood that Hypnos made no distinction between philosopher and farm animal. His gift of sleep was universal, a thread connecting all creatures in shared vulnerability and renewal. In Greek mythology, sleep had a twin. Hypnos, the god of peaceful slumber, shared his existence with Thanatos, who embodied death itself. They were born together from Nyx, the primordial goddess of night, and lived side by side in a quiet realm beneath the earth. The Greeks saw these brothers as natural companions. Where Hypnos brought temporary rest, Thanatos brought permanent peace. Artists often depicted them as young men with wings, Hypnos with white feathers that caught the light, Thanatos with darker plumes that absorbed it. Sometimes they appeared together on funeral urns and temple walls, standing close enough that their wings touched. Their relationship fascinated philosophers and poets. Sleep and death seemed so similar. Both brought stillness, both took consciousness away. Yet one was gentle and reversible, while the other was final. The brothers worked in harmony, never competing. Hypnos would ease mortals into rest each night, while Thanatos waited patiently for those whose time had come. In their underground palace, they kept separate quarters but shared the same eternal darkness. Neither spoke much. They understood each other through silence, through the particular quality of quiet that surrounds both sleeping bodies and those who will never wake again. In ancient Greek stories, death had two faces. While most cultures painted death as something dark and terrible, the Greeks saw it differently. They had Thanatos, who brought the gentle end, not the violent death of battle or disease, but the quiet slipping away that comes with time. Thanatos moved through the world with soft wings, carrying poppies that brought eternal sleep. When someone's thread of life reached its natural end, he would arrive silently. No struggle, no fear, just a peaceful transition, like falling asleep after a very long day. The Greeks understood that not all endings were the same. Where his sisters, the Koreas, brought brutal death on battlefields, Thanatos offered something else entirely. He was the death that came to the elderly in their beds, to those whose time had simply come. His touch was described as softer than a mother's hand, his presence more comforting than frightening. This distinction mattered deeply to them. In their prayers and stories, they spoke of hoping for Thanatos rather than other forms of death. He represented the idea that leaving this world didn't have to be violent or painful. It could be as natural as the sun setting at the end of the day. In Greek mythology, sleep and death were brothers, Hypnos and Thanatos. They were called twin sons of night herself. The Greeks noticed something that still catches our attention today: how similar these two states appear from the outside. A sleeping person lies still, breathing softly, unreachable. The boundary between sleep and its darker twin has always been thin in human imagination. The connection runs through countless cultures. In medieval Europe, people would say someone had fallen asleep when they died. The euphemism persists. We still use it. Egyptian tomb paintings show the deceased in positions of rest, as if they might wake at any moment. The Book of the Dead describes death as a journey through darkness, much like the nightly voyage through dreams. This similarity shaped bedtime prayers for centuries. Children learned to say if I should die before I wake, because the uncertainty felt real. Each night brought a small rehearsal of mortality. The body grows cold, consciousness fades, the sleeper becomes unreachable. Morning wasn't guaranteed, just hoped for. The resemblance between these states wasn't merely poetic. It reflected a fundamental mystery about where consciousness goes when it leaves us, temporarily or forever. Sleep carried a different meaning for people centuries ago. When night fell and consciousness slipped away, many believed they were experiencing something far more serious than simple rest. The body grew cold and still. Breathing became shallow, almost imperceptible. A person lying in deep sleep looked remarkably similar to someone who had passed away. This resemblance wasn't lost on our ancestors. They called it the small death, or sometimes the little death. Each night brought a rehearsal of mortality, a temporary departure from the living world. People would pray before bed, not just for pleasant dreams, but for the promise of waking again. The comparison made sense in their world. Without electric lights, nights were profoundly dark. Without modern medicine, the line between sleep and death sometimes blurred in frightening ways. Stories circulated about people who appeared dead but were merely in deep slumber, and others who seemed to be sleeping but never woke. This belief shaped bedtime rituals across cultures. Candles burned through the night to ward off permanent sleep. Families checked on sleeping relatives, listening for breath, watching for movement. What we now understand as a biological necessity for restoration, they experienced as a nightly journey into uncertain territory. In Greek mythology, morning held a special significance that went beyond simple daylight. When the goddess Eos opened the gates of dawn with her rosy fingers, she wasn't just bringing light to the world, she was bringing renewal itself. The Greeks understood sleep as a temporary visit to the realm of Thanatos, the god of death. Each night mortals would slip away from the waking world, their consciousness drifting into territories controlled by divine brothers, Hypnos with his gentle sleep, and Thanatos with his final embrace. This nightly journey made every sunrise meaningful. When morning arrived and sleepers stirred from their beds, they were essentially crossing back from that shadowy realm. The morning light didn't just chase away darkness, it pulled souls back from the edge of eternity. Every awakening was a small victory over the forces that held dominion in the night. This pattern shaped how the Greeks viewed their days. Dawn prayers weren't mere routine, they were acknowledgments of having returned from a journey. The first moments of consciousness carried weight because they marked another successful passage through the dangerous hours when Hypnos and his kin held sway over mortal minds. The Greeks painted them as twins on their pottery. Hypnos, the god of sleep, and Thanatos, the god of death, appeared side by side on vases and funeral urns. Artists gave them similar faces, similar wings, similar poses. Sometimes they were shown carrying a fallen warrior together, one at the shoulders, one at the feet. In these paintings, Hypnos usually held a horn dripping with poppy juice or river water from Lethe, the stream of forgetfulness. Thanatos carried a sword, though it often rested peacefully at his side. The artist seemed to understand something about how these two forces worked together in human life. On one famous vase from around 500 BCE, the twins lift the body of Sarpedon, a hero from the Trojan War. Their movements mirror each other perfectly. Their expressions are calm, almost gentle. The painter chose to show them not as frightening figures, but as careful attendants performing a necessary service. This artistic tradition continued for centuries. Roman sarcophagi featured the same pairing, the same quiet partnership between temporary rest and permanent silence. The sculptors knew that sleep and death shared more than just a family resemblance. They shared a fundamental kindness, a release from the weight of being awake and alive. Greek art frequently showed the twin brothers arriving on battlefields to care for fallen warriors. This wasn't random artistic choice, but recognition of their distinct roles in the aftermath of conflict. While dying soldiers might receive Thanatos' final mercy, the wounded and exhausted living required Hypnos' healing rest. The battlefield scenes revealed how the Greeks understood death and sleep as forms of divine rescue. Warriors who had fought beyond their limits, who carried wounds that would take time to heal, needed Hypnos to carry them away from consciousness temporarily. Those whose injuries were beyond mortal remedy needed Thanatos to carry them away permanently. Neither brother was shown as destroyer or enemy. Both appeared as gentle rescuers who arrived to end suffering when human endurance had reached its limits. Their presence on battlefields meant mercy, not punishment. They offered escape from pain that had become unbearable. The artistic depictions often showed them working together, Hypnos taking the wounded to healing rest, while Thanatos guided the dying to peaceful departure. They moved through the carnage with calm purpose, bringing their different gifts to those who needed them most. This imagery served an important function for families who lost loved ones in war. It provided reassurance that fallen warriors hadn't died alone or abandoned. Divine hands had been present to ease their transition, whether temporary through sleep or permanent through death. The peaceful rest approaching you tonight carries echoes of this ancient compassion, this understanding that sleep and death both serve as rescue when the burdens of existence become too heavy to bear. Hypnos made his home far from the gleaming halls of Mount Olympus, while Zeus and the other gods dwelt in their palace above the clouds. The god of sleep chose darkness and distance. His realm lay deep beneath the earth, in a cave where the sun's light could never reach. The entrance to his dwelling was said to be near the land of the Cimmerians, a place of perpetual twilight where thick mists rolled across the landscape. No rooster crowed there. No dog barked. The river Lethe flowed silently past his doorway, its waters carrying forgetfulness to any who drank from them. Inside the cave, everything was designed for rest. The walls were smooth and cool. Soft shadows filled every corner. At the center stood an ebony bed where Hypnos himself would lie, surrounded by countless streams that drifted like smoke through the chambers. His sons Theo and Roy moved quietly through these halls, preparing the visions they would carry to mortals each night. This separation from Olympus wasn't exile, it was choice. Sleep needed its own sacred space, removed from the brightness and noise of the divine court. In his underground palace, Hypnos could work undisturbed, weaving rest across the world. Hypnos made his home in a place where daylight never reached, far beyond the lands where mortals built their cities and tended their fields. The Greeks spoke of this distant realm at the very edge of existence, where the earth met the endless void. There, in perpetual twilight, the god of sleep had carved out his domain. No sun ever rose above this threshold between worlds. The boundary itself seemed to blur, as if reality grew softer there, more willing to bend into the shapes that dreams take. Some said mists rolled eternally through this borderland, while others claimed the air itself grew thick with drowsiness. The silence was absolute, broken only by the gentle flow of Lethe, the river of forgetfulness that wound its way through the darkness. In this liminal space, neither fully part of the living world nor belonging to the depths below, Hypnos kept his court. The location suited his nature perfectly. Here, at the world's edge, consciousness itself seemed to fade, making the transition from waking to sleeping as natural as breathing. Even the approach to his realm induced a kind of peaceful exhaustion in any who drew near. In the depths of the underworld, where light itself seemed to forget its purpose, Hypnos made his home in a realm perpetually shrouded in mist. This wasn't the morning fog that rises from rivers or the sea spray that dances along coastlines. This was something else entirely, a thick, unchanging veil that hung between the world of the living and the territories of eternal sleep. The mist served as both barrier and invitation. It muffled all sounds from the upper world, creating a silence so complete that even thought seemed to slow down. Within this gray expanse, distance lost its meaning. A step might carry you nowhere, or it might bring you to the very threshold of Hypnos' cave. Time moved differently here too, or perhaps it didn't move at all. Those few mortals who glimpsed this realm in their deepest dreams described the mist as neither cold nor warm, neither wet nor dry. It simply was a presence that wrapped around everything, softening edges and blurring boundaries. Even the river Lethe, which flowed nearby, seemed to dissolve into the perpetual haze, its waters of forgetfulness mingling with the air itself until memory and mist became one. The sun never fully rose there. In the far western reaches of the Greek world, beyond where mortal ships dared to sail, twilight hung perpetually over the land. This was the realm of eternal dusk, where Helios's chariot would dip below the horizon but never quite climb back into morning. The Greeks spoke of this place in hushed tones, a territory where day and night existed in permanent suspension. Neither the bright noon of Zeus's domain nor the complete darkness of Tartarus held sway here. Instead, a gentle half-light bathed everything in silver and shadow, creating a world that existed between states of being. Here, time moved differently. Without the sun's full journey across the sky to mark the hours, moments stretched and compressed according to their own logic. The air itself seemed heavier, filled with a drowsy quality that made visitors' eyelids grow heavy, and their thoughts turn soft and dreamlike. This perpetual twilight served as nature's own threshold. In this dimness, the boundaries between sleeping and waking grew thin. Colors muted into gentle grays and blues, while sounds arrived muffled and distant, as if heard through layers of cloth or water. The entrance to Hypnos' cave was unlike any other place in the Greek underworld, where most caverns opened with stark stone and shadow. His threshold bloomed with thousands of poppies. These flowers grew in impossible abundance, their papery petals catching what little light filtered through the perpetual twilight. The poppies weren't ordinary blooms. Their deep red centers seemed to pulse with a drowsy rhythm, and their stems bent and swayed even when no breeze touched them. Some said they grew from seeds that fell from Hypnos's own hands, while others believed they sprouted from the dreams of mortals who had passed too close to eternal sleep. The flowers formed a natural barrier between the waking world and the realm of slumber. Their scent was heavy and sweet, drifting outward in invisible tendrils. Any creature who breathed too deeply of their perfume would find their eyelids growing heavy, their thoughts becoming soft and distant. Even the gods themselves approached carefully, knowing that the poppy's power could touch immortal minds. At the cave's mouth, where the flowers grew thickest, their petals carpeted the ground in layers of crimson and black. The entrance itself seemed to breathe with the flowers' gentle movement, as if the cave and its guardian blooms shared the same sleepy heartbeat. The river Lethe wound its way through the underworld, its waters dark and slow. This was no ordinary stream. It carried the gift of forgetfulness, washing away memories from souls who drank from its depths. The Greeks knew it as one of 5 rivers in the realm of the dead, each with its own purpose and power. Near where Hypnos made his home, the Lethe's waters moved with barely a sound. The proximity wasn't coincidental. Sleep and forgetting share a kinship that the Greeks understood well. When mortals drifted into slumber, they left behind the weight of their daily concerns. Much like souls drinking from Lethe, left behind their earthly memories, the river served those who were destined for rebirth. Before returning to the world above, souls would drink deeply and emerge clean of their past lives. Some stories tell of living heroes who glimpsed the Lethe during their journeys to the underworld, careful to avoid even a single drop. The waters held such power that even the gods respected their authority. In the quiet darkness where Hypnos dwelt, the Lethe flowed on, patient and eternal, offering its strange mercy to those who needed to forget. The river Lethe flowed through the underworld like liquid forgetfulness itself. Its waters moved without sound, darker than night, carrying away everything they touched. The Greeks knew this river as the stream of oblivion, one of 5 that wound through the realm of Hades. Those who drank from Lethe lost their memories completely. Every joy, every pain, every face they had ever known dissolved into the dark current. The water tasted of nothing at all. How could it, when taste itself was a memory waiting to be washed away? Some souls welcomed this erasure. After lifetimes of loss and grief, the promise of forgetting drew them to the riverbank like moths to flame. The connection between Lethe and sleep ran deep in Greek thought. Each night brought its own small forgetting, its own gentle erasure of the day's sharp edges. Morning often found yesterday's worries softened, their urgency dissolved like salt in water. This was why the Greeks sometimes called sleep the little death, and death the longer sleep. Both offered refuge from memory's weight. Even the gods respected Lethe's power. Its waters could strip away divine recollection, as even the gods respected Lethe's power. Its waters could strip away divine recollection as easily as mortal remembrance, making it one of the few forces in existence that treated all beings equally. Sily as mortal remembrance. Making it one of the few forces in existence that treated all beings equally. Inside the cave, perfect silence reigned. Not even the smallest echo disturbed the stillness that wrapped around everything like a thick blanket. The Greeks believed that Hypnos had chosen this place precisely because sound itself seemed to die at the threshold. No birds sang near the entrance. No insect buzzed in the shadows. Even the wind, which howled freely across the mountainsides above, fell silent as it approached. This wasn't ordinary quiet. It was the kind of absolute stillness that made visitors aware of their own heartbeat, their own breathing suddenly too loud in the void. The silence had weight to it, pressing gently against the ears, filling the space between thoughts. Some said that words spoken here would simply dissolve into the darkness, never reaching their intended listener. The cave walls seemed to absorb all disturbance, as if they were lined with the very essence of sleep itself. In this profound hush, consciousness itself began to soften at the edges. The boundary between waking and sleeping grew thin, until visitors found themselves unsure which side they stood on. This was hypnosis domain, where silence was not merely the absence of sound, but a living presence that guided all who entered toward inevitable slumber. This absence wasn't accidental. Roosters served as nature's heralds, their calls piercing through sleep to summon mortals back to consciousness. But near Hypnos domain, even these bold creatures felt the weight of perpetual drowsiness that hung in the air like morning mist that never lifted. The threshold between sleep and waking blurred here, and the roosters instinctively kept their distance, as if understanding that their purpose had no place in these quiet lands. The Greeks noticed this peculiarity. Farmers living in the valleys below spoke of how their roosters would fall silent when the wind blew from the direction of certain caves. Some claimed that any rooster brought too close would simply settle into the grass and close its eyes, forgetting its duty to announce the sun. In Hypnos' presence, even the most reliable markers of time lost their meaning, leaving only the soft rhythm of eternal twilight. In the realm of Hypnos, silence held a particular quality. The god of sleep carried with him an aura that touched all living things, and even the most vigilant guard dogs would fall quiet when he passed near. Their keen senses, normally alert to any approaching stranger, simply could not detect his presence. This wasn't merely divine invisibility, it was something deeper, a fundamental incompatibility between the nature of sleep and the instinct to warn or protect. Dogs throughout the Greek world might bark at shadows, at distant sounds, at the approach of death itself. But when Hypnos drew close to a household, bringing his gift of slumber, the animals would settle into unusual calm. The silence extended beyond dogs to all creatures that might disturb the night. Roosters would not crow early, horses would not whinny in their stalls, and even the insects would hush their evening songs. This quieting wasn't forced upon them. It simply happened, as natural as breathing, slowing in rest. Some mortals noticed these pockets of absolute stillness and learned to recognize them as signs that the god of sleep walked among them, invisible but undeniably present in the peculiar peace that preceded dreams. In Greek mythology, dreams weren't random flickerings of the sleeping mind. They came from somewhere specific, from beings who lived in a cave near the edge of the world. These were the Onare, the 1,000 sons of Hypnos, and each one carried a different kind of dream. The Greeks believed that when you fell asleep, one of these dream spirits would visit you. Some brought prophecies wrapped in strange symbols. Others delivered simple visions of daily life, while their darker brothers carried nightmares that left sleepers gasping awake in the pre-dawn hours. Among these 1,000 children, Morpheus stood apart. He specialized in dreams where people appeared perfectly mimicking human forms, voices, and mannerisms. His brother Phobatar brought dreams of beasts and monsters, while Phantassos crafted dreams of inanimate objects that seemed to live and breathe in the sleeping world. Every night, these spirits would emerge from their cave through 2 gates. True dreams passed through a gate of horn, while false dreams slipped through ivory. The Onoroi would fly silently across the world, invisible to waking eyes, entering homes and touching the minds of sleepers with their particular gifts or curses. Among all the children of Hypnos, Morpheus held a special place in the realm of sleep. While his father governed sleep itself, Morpheus became the master of dreams, particularly those that took human form. The Greeks believed that when someone dreamed of their loved ones, friends, or even strangers, it was Morpheus who had visited them in the night. His name came from the Greek word morphe, meaning form or shape, because of his remarkable ability to perfectly mimic any human appearance. Unlike his brothers, who might appear as animals or objects in dreams, Morpheus specialized in human forms. He could capture every detail: the way someone walked, their voice, their gestures, even the smallest mannerisms that made a person recognizable. The Greeks spoke of Morpheus dwelling in a cave near the realm of his father, where no sunlight ever reached and where the river of forgetfulness flowed nearby. From this dark sanctuary, he would fly out each night on silent wings, visiting mortals with dreams that could comfort, warn, or sometimes deceive. His skill was so perfect that dreamers rarely realized they were seeing an imitation rather than the real person. The Greek word morpha means form or shape, and from this simple word comes the name of Morpheus, the god who shaped dreams. In the quiet hours when sleep took hold, Morpheus worked with forms themselves, crafting the appearances that filled the sleeping mind. While his father Hypnos brought the gentle weight of sleep, Morpheus specialized in something more delicate. He was the dream shaper, the one who could take any form and present it perfectly in dreams. His gift lay in mimicry, so precise that dreamers never questioned what they saw: a father's face, a friend's voice, the way someone walked or gestured. Morpheus captured these details and wove them into the fabric of dreams. The Greeks understood that dreams weren't random fragments, but carefully constructed visions. In their stories, when gods needed to deliver messages through sleep, they often called upon Morpheus. He could appear as anyone, matching not just their appearance but their mannerisms, their way of speaking, even the small habits that made someone recognizable. This wasn't mere illusion, but a deeper kind of shaping, where form became so real that it carried meaning, comfort, or warning to those who slept. The soft forms of people filled the dreams that Morpheus brought each night, while his brothers Phobetor and Phantassos crafted beasts and objects in the sleeping mind. Morpheus held a different gift. He could shape the perfect image of any person: their walk, their voice, even the smallest gesture of their hands. When sailors slept far from home, Morpheus might bring them visions of their wives standing by the shore. The dreaming mind would see every detail clearly: the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the particular tilt of her head when listening. These weren't mere shadows or suggestions. Morpheus captured the essence of each person he recreated, making them so real that dreamers often woke expecting to find their loved ones beside them. This son of Hypnos moved through the night on silent wings, carrying his gift from one sleeper to the next. He knew the human form better than any sculptor, understanding not just how people looked but how they moved through the world. In dreams, the figures he shaped could speak words of comfort, deliver messages, or simply stand as silent reminders of those separated by distance or death. In Greek mythology, dreams weren't random images floating through sleep. They had architects, and the most skilled of these was Morpheus. When sleepers saw their loved ones in dreams, when they met strangers who spoke with familiar voices, when they witnessed people moving through dreamscapes as naturally as in waking life, this was Morpheus at work. He was one of the Onoroi, the 1,000 dream spirits who served his father Hypnos. But while his brothers might send vague visions or abstract symbols, Morpheus specialized in something far more delicate. He could take any human form, matching not just appearance but voice, gesture, and manner. The way someone tilted their head when listening, their particular way of laughing, the rhythm of their walk, Morpheus captured it all. This ability made him the most sought after of dream spirits. When gods needed to deliver messages through trusted faces, they called upon Morpheus. He would slip through the gates of horn and ivory, entering the minds of sleepers, wearing the faces they most needed to see. Sometimes he brought comfort through the image of a distant friend. Other times, he carried warnings in the form of respected elders. His craft was so perfect that dreamers rarely questioned whether the people they met in sleep were real. Morpheus possessed a rare gift among the dream gods, the ability to become anyone. While his brothers brought animals or landscapes into sleeping minds, Morpheus specialized in people. He could study a person's walk, memorize the exact pitch of their laugh, and reproduce every small gesture they made when nervous or content. In dreams, he might appear as a lost friend, speaking in their familiar tone about shared memories. Or he could take the form of a parent, complete with their particular way of tilting their head when listening. Every detail mattered to Morpheus: the rhythm of speech, the weight of footsteps, even the specific way someone might touch their face when deep in thought. This talent made him the most sought after of Hypnos's 1,000 sons. When the gods needed to deliver messages through dreams, they called upon Morpheus. He could slip into a sleeper's mind, wearing the face of someone they trusted completely. The dreamer would wake believing they had truly spoken with their loved one, never suspecting that every word, every gesture had been carefully crafted by the god of human forms. His artistry went beyond simple mimicry. Morpheus understood that recognition lived in the smallest details: a crooked smile, a particular way of pronouncing certain words, the specific pattern of someone's breathing when they were about to speak. The Greek world understood dreams as messages, and Morpheus carried them through the darkness. While his father, Hypnos, brought the weight of sleep itself, Morpheus specialized in something more delicate: the visions that played behind closed eyes. His name came from the Greek word for form or shape, and this perfectly captured his gift. Where other dream spirits might send abstract feelings or confusing symbols, Morpheus could craft perfect illusions. He could appear as a loved one bringing comfort, a stranger bearing warnings, or recreate entire scenes from waking life with such precision that dreamers believed them real. The Greeks spoke of him visiting mortals in their sleep, slipping through ivory and horn gates that separated true dreams from false ones. His brothers, the Onoroi, each had their own talents. Phobeter could become any animal. Phantasos could transform into rocks and trees, but Morpheus alone mastered human forms. This made him the most trusted messenger among the dream spirits. When someone needed to receive an important vision, when the gods themselves wanted to communicate through sleep, they turned to Morpheus. His touch was so gentle that dreamers rarely remembered the moment he arrived, only the perfectly formed visions. The gods of Greece rarely spoke to mortals directly. When Zeus had messages to deliver, or when Athena wished to guide a hero's path, they turned to dreams as their chosen medium. In the quiet hours of night, divine will flowed through the gates of horn and ivory, carried by the 1,000 forms of Morpheus and his brothers. Heroes would wake with clarity about their destinies. A warrior might dream of an eagle circling overhead and understand that Zeus watched his journey. A young woman might see Artemis walking through moonlit forests and know her prayers had been heard. These weren't simple visions, they were conversations between the divine and mortal worlds, shaped by sleep's strange language. The gods appreciated this indirect method. It allowed them to plant seeds of wisdom without overwhelming human minds with their true presence. Through dreams, Apollo could share prophecies, Demeter could warn of coming harvests, and even stern Hades could send messages from those who had passed beyond life's threshold. Sleep became the sacred space where immortal thoughts could touch mortal consciousness, a bridge built each night between Olympus and the earthly realm below. In the realm of dreams, Morpheus wasn't alone. He had two brothers who shared his work in the night. Isolus was the first, a dream god who specialized in creating realistic visions. When someone dreamed of ordinary life, walking through familiar streets, talking with friends, or sitting at their own table, that was Isolus at work. He crafted dreams so lifelike that sleepers often woke, confused, unsure if they'd been dreaming at all. The other brother was Phantasos, whose gift lay in transformation. He appeared in dreams as inanimate objects, rocks, trees, water, or earth. Through him, the sleeping mind encountered the non-human world. A dreamer might find themselves speaking with a mountain or watching a river change its course. Phantasos brought the impossible into the sleeping hours, where natural laws bent and shifted. Together, the three brothers divided the work of dreams between them. Morpheus took human forms, Isolus handled realistic scenarios, and Phantasos managed everything else. They worked through the night, each contributing their particular skill to the tapestry of sleep. The Greeks understood that dreams came in many forms, and these three gods ensured that every type of vision found its way to the sleeping world. In the realm of dreams, not all visitors were welcome. While Morpheus crafted human forms and Phantos conjured illusions of objects and landscapes, their brother Phobetor had a darker gift. Some called him Isolus, though few spoke either name willingly. He was the shaper of nightmares, the one who transformed sleep into terror. Phobetor specialized in becoming beasts. When sleepers found themselves pursued by wolves with gleaming eyes, or cornered by serpents that coiled endlessly, that was his work. He could take the shape of any creature that crawled, flew, or stalked through mortal fears. A bear rising on its hind legs, a scorpion with its tail curved to strike, a flock of ravens descending in a black cloud. These were his favorite forms. The Greeks understood that nightmares served a purpose. Through Phobetor's visitations, mortals confronted their deepest anxieties while their bodies lay safe in bed. His transformations weren't random cruelty, but careful selections drawn from each dreamer's own fears. A shepherd might dream of wolves, while a sailor faced sea monsters rising from dark waters. Even in terror, there was meaning, though the dreamer rarely welcomed the lesson. Phobetor worked in shadows where his brothers could not follow, while Morpheus shaped human forms and Isolus crafted the natural world. Phobetor brought forth the creatures that made hearts race in the darkness of sleep. His domain was the realm of fangs and claws, of shapes that shouldn't exist but somehow did in the landscape of dreams. The Greeks spoke of him as the third brother, the one who dealt in nightmares. When a massive serpent coiled through someone's sleep, that was Phobetor's touch. When a lion stalked through dream corridors, or a chimera breathed fire across sleeping thoughts. His hand had shaped them. He didn't just create ordinary animals. He specialized in the monstrous, the hybrid, the impossible. In the Cave of Sleep, where his father Hypnos dwelt, Phobodor kept to the deeper chambers. His craft required different materials than his brothers used, darker elements drawn from mortal fears. Some said he could take the shape of any beast himself, becoming the very terrors he sent to others. Whether guardian or tormentor, Phobodor ensured that not all dreams brought comfort, maintaining the balance his father required between peaceful rest and the warnings that sometimes came wrapped in scales and shadow. In the realm of Morpheus and his brothers, not all dreams brought comfort or wonder. The Greeks knew that sleep could also bring terror, and they gave this darker gift a name, Phobodor, whose very essence was fear itself. While Morpheus took human form in dreams and his brother Isolus appeared as animals, Phobodor specialized in the nightmares that made sleepers wake with racing hearts. He was the one who crafted the shadows that chased mortals through endless corridors, the falling sensations that jolted them awake, the formless dread that lingered even after dawn broke. The Greeks understood that Phobodor served a purpose in the grand design of sleep. His frightening visions weren't mere cruelty, they were messages, warnings, or sometimes reflections of guilt and anxiety that needed expression. When someone dreamed of being pursued by monsters or standing at the edge of a bottomless chasm, they recognized Phobodor's hand at work. His realm lay in the darkest corner of the dream world, where even his brothers rarely ventured. There, he shaped the substances of fear, not just visual terrors, but the very feeling of dread itself, the sensation of helplessness that only dreams can truly capture. Phantasos was the third brother among the dream spirits, and his gift was perhaps the strangest of all. While Morpheus took human forms and Isolus became creatures, Phantasos shaped the world itself within dreams. He was the architect of sleeping landscapes, the one who built the stages where nighttime visions played out. In the realm of sleep, Phantasos would craft mountains that touched impossible skies, rivers that flowed upward, and forests where the trees bore fruit made of starlight. He could create a simple room that felt both familiar and wrong, or fashion entire cities that existed only while the dreamer slept. His touch turned thought into substance, memory into geography. The Greeks understood that dreams needed more than just actors. They needed settings that could shift and change with the logic of sleep. Phantasos provided these fluid backgrounds, these spaces where walls might suddenly dissolve or where a childhood home could stand beside an ocean that never existed. He was the one who made sure that when you found yourself in a dream, there was always a world around you, even if that world made no sense upon waking. Core idea, landscapes and environments were his domain. The world transformed when Morpheus moved through it. In the realm of dreams, physical laws meant nothing to him. Mountains could flow like water, forests might grow downward from cloudy skies, and oceans could hang suspended in the air. He shaped these impossible places with the same ease that a potter molds clay. Every landscape that appeared in dreams bore his touch. When someone dreamed of their childhood home, it was Morpheus who reconstructed those familiar walls. Though he might add corridors that never existed, or windows that opened onto different seasons, he understood that dream environments needed to feel real while remaining fluid, shifting with the dreamer's emotions and memories. His brothers handled other aspects of the dream realm. Isolus crafted the creatures and people who populated these spaces, while Phantasos became the objects within them. But the stage itself, the very ground and sky of dreams, belonged to Morpheus alone. He painted deserts that turned to meadows with each footstep, cities where the streets rearranged themselves, and gardens where flowers bloomed backwards into seeds. These weren't random creations. They reflected something deeper about the dreamer, though the meaning often remained hidden until waking. In the realm of dreams where phantasos held sway, the sensation of flight belonged to him above all others. While his brothers, Morpheus and Isolus, shaped human forms and beasts, phantasos crafted the inanimate world that dreams required. The ground that fell away beneath a dreamer's feet, the air that seemed to hold them aloft. Even the clouds they might pass through, these were his domain. The Greeks spoke of how phantasos would weave these flying dreams with particular care. He would thin the dream air until it could barely hold weight, then release the dreamer into that weightless space. Some nights he might add wind beneath them, carrying them over familiar landscapes transformed by height. Other times he left them to discover their own way through empty sky. These dreams of flight weren't random gifts. They often came to those whose waking hours felt heavy with burden or constraint. Phantasos would lift them from their sleeping forms and show them what movement without effort felt like. The freedom wasn't just physical, it was the absence of all the invisible weights that daylight brings. In his realm, mortals could move as the gods moved, unbound by the earth that usually claimed them. When people in Greek times experienced the strange physics of dreams, they often credited Morpheus with these peculiar distortions. In the waking world, a person might struggle to lift a heavy stone, but in dreams they could toss boulders like pebbles. Water might flow upward, forming rivers in the sky. A dreamer could leap across entire valleys or find themselves walking through solid walls as if they were made of mist. The Greeks noticed these impossible moments and saw them as evidence of Morpheus at work. His realm operated by different rules entirely. Time bent and stretched in his domain. A conversation that felt like hours might pass in the span of a single breath, or an entire lifetime could unfold between sunset and dawn. Objects changed size and shape without reason. A small cup could hold an entire ocean, or a vast temple might fit inside a seashell. This wasn't seen as mere confusion or error. The Greeks understood these dream impossibilities as glimpses into a different kind of existence, one where Morpheus shaped reality according to his own mysterious purposes. The normal laws that governed their daily lives simply didn't apply in his kingdom of sleep. The sons of Hypnos rarely worked alone. When darkness fell over Greece, they would gather in their father's cave, where silver light pooled like water on the stone floor. Morpheus would arrive first, his form shifting between shapes as naturally as breathing. Then came Isolus, who could become any creature that walked or flew, and Phantasos, master of all things without life. Their collaboration was something to witness. Morpheus would begin by crafting the human figures, giving them faces pulled from memory and voices that sounded almost real. While he worked, Isolus would add the animals, perhaps a dog sleeping by a hearth, or birds settling into olive trees for the night. Phantasos completed their worlds with remarkable detail. He'd shaped the walls of familiar homes, the texture of wool blankets, even the way moonlight fell through windows. These dream realms were more than simple visions. They were complete experiences where everything felt tangible. The brothers understood that dreams needed consistency to feel true, so they'd ensure that water flowed downward, that shadows fell in the right direction, that the air carried the right sense. Together, They wove experiences so seamless that sleepers never questioned what they saw until dawn broke the spell. In the quiet chambers where Morpheus worked, dream shaping was an art of transformation. The god would appear in sleeping minds not as himself, but as the people dreamers knew. He became mothers speaking wisdom, lost friends returning with messages, or strangers who would one day matter. His gift lay in capturing every detail that made someone human. The way a father's hand rested on his hip when thinking, how a sister tucked hair behind her ear when nervous, the particular rhythm of a merchant's laugh. These weren't mere illusions, but perfect recreations, so complete that dreamers never questioned their reality while asleep. Morpheus could become anyone who had ever lived. In dreams of soldiers, he appeared as fallen comrades. For homesick travelers, he took the form of waiting families. Sometimes he became people the dreamer hadn't met yet, planting faces in sleep that would later spark recognition in waking life. This power made him unique among the Oneroi, his 1,000 dream spirit brothers. While others could conjure beasts or objects, only Morpheus mastered the complexity of human form. Through him, the sleeping mind could hold conversations with the absent, rehearse words never spoken, and meet again those separated by distance or death. Phobetor was the quietest of the Oneroi brothers, rarely spoken of in the temples, and forgotten by most who prayed to the gods of sleep. While Morpheus took human form in dreams and Isolus became the birds and beasts, Phobetor's gift was darker. He transformed into the things that made hearts race in the night: writhing serpents, prowling beasts with too many eyes, creatures that existed nowhere in the waking world. The Greeks understood that nightmares served a purpose. When Phobetor visited, he didn't simply frighten. His monstrous forms carried messages from the deeper places of the mind, warnings wrapped in scales and fangs. A merchant who had cheated might dream of being pursued by a creature with the face of every person he had wronged. A soldier might see himself transformed into the very monster he feared becoming. In the Cave of Dreams, where the Oneroi dwelled, Phobetor worked in shadow while his brothers crafted in light. His transformations were perfect in their horror. Each claw precisely placed, each impossible anatomy somehow believable within the logic of sleep. The Greeks knew that even the most terrifying dreams came from divine hands, and perhaps that made them all the more unsettling. In the quiet halls of sleep, Morpheus wasn't alone. His brother Phantassos worked alongside him, though his gifts were different. While Morpheus took human form in dreams, Phantassos became everything else: the walls of a childhood home, the endless ocean, the mountain path that wound through mist. When a dreamer found themselves in a familiar kitchen, that was Phantassos. The worn wooden table, the sunlight through dusty windows, the particular way shadows fell across the floor. He shaped every inanimate detail that made dreams feel real. A warrior might dream of bronze shields and marble columns. A farmer would see golden wheat fields stretching to the horizon. Phantassos created them all. The Greeks understood that dreams needed more than just characters. They needed a world to inhabit. Phantassos provided that world, shifting from stone to storm cloud, from gentle river to towering cliff face. He was the master of illusion who made the impossible geography of dreams seem perfectly natural while you slept. His artistry lay in the details: the texture of dream fabric, the weight of dream water, the particular shade of a dream sky that felt familiar, even when it had never existed before. In Greek mythology, dreams found their way to sleeping mortals through two distinct gates. One gate was fashioned from horn, translucent and honest, allowing only true dreams to pass through its threshold. These dreams carried messages that would unfold in the waking world, exactly as they appeared in sleep. The other gate was carved from ivory, beautiful but deceptive, releasing false dreams that would mislead and confuse those who received them. The twin gates stood at the edge of the realm of dreams, where Morpheus and his brothers sorted the visions that would visit humanity each night. Some dreams came bearing prophecies from the gods themselves, while others were mere phantoms, shadows of fears and wishes that held no truth. Homer wrote of these gates in the Odyssey, when Penelope spoke of her uncertainty about a dream she'd received. She wondered whether her vision had emerged from the gate of horn, promising her husband's return, or from the ivory gate, offering only false hope. The Greeks understood that sleep brought both revelation and illusion, and distinguishing between them required wisdom. For the gates themselves gave no sign of which dreams they had released into the night. Dreams didn't simply happen. They traveled from their own realm through specific pathways into the mortal world. The most significant of these pathways were two gates that stood at the boundary between sleep and waking. The gate of horn was where true dreams passed through. These weren't ordinary visions that drifted through sleeping minds. They were messages, prophecies, and glimpses of what was real or what would come to be. The horn itself wasn't chosen randomly. Its translucent quality allowed truth to shine through, much like how genuine dreams revealed themselves with clarity once understood. Morpheus, the god of dreams and son of Hypnos, knew these gates well. He and his brothers would guide different types of dreams through their appropriate entrances, while Morpheus specialized in dreams where he took human form. All true dreams, whether warnings from the gods or visions of actual events, had to pass through the gate of horn. Not all dreams were equal. Some carried weight and meaning that could change the course of lives. These significant dreams, the ones that mattered, could only enter the world through horn's honest passage. In the realm of sleep, two gates stood at the boundary between dreams and the waking world. The gate of ivory was the more treacherous of the two. Through its pale, polished archway flowed the false dreams, those visions that would deceive and mislead mortals when they opened their eyes. Not all dreams carried truth. Some were crafted specifically to confuse, to plant seeds of doubt, or to lead people away from their proper paths. These deceptive visions passed through the ivory portal, beautiful in their falseness, convincing in their lies. The gate itself was said to gleam with an unnatural smoothness, its surface too perfect to be trusted. Dreams that emerged from this entrance might show a merchant great wealth that would never materialize, or promise a warrior glory in a battle he was destined to lose. They were the dreams that felt absolutely real in the moment of sleeping, but dissolved into impossibility with the morning light. Mortals had no way of knowing, while they slept, which gate their dreams had passed through. Only time would reveal whether their nighttime visions held prophecy, or merely the hollow beauty of ivory's false promises. The Roman poet Virgil wove sleep and death throughout his epic tale of Aeneas, drawing deeply from Greek traditions. In the Aeneid, Hypnos appears as Somnus, maintaining his role as the gentle brother of death. When the gods need to intervene in mortal affairs, they often call upon sleep's power to shift the course of events. One of the most striking moments comes when Juno seeks to destroy the Trojan fleet. She approaches Somnus in his drowsy cave, offering bribes of divine gifts. The god of sleep initially resists, remembering how he once suffered Zeus's wrath for similar interference. But Juno's promises prove too tempting, and Somnus agrees to cast his spell over Palinurus, Aeneas's loyal helmsman. As the fleet sails through calm waters, Somnus descends in disguise. He sprinkles the waters of Lethe over Palinurus's eyes, and despite the helmsman's desperate struggle to stay awake, sleep overwhelms him. In that dangerous moment between consciousness and dreams, Palinurus falls into the sea, still clutching the tiller. The boundary between sleep and death blurs, just as the Greek poets always understood. Through Virgil's Latin verses, the Greek conception of sleep as death's gentle brother found new life, reminding readers that both states remove us from the waking world. In Greek tradition, true dreams arrived with a different quality altogether. They carried weight and substance, pressing themselves into memory with unusual clarity. The gods sent these visions through gates of horn, and mortals who received them often woke with every detail intact, the faces clear, the words precise, the emotions still fresh in their hearts. Priests at the oracle sites spoke of how true dreams lingered. Unlike the fleeting impressions that dissolved with morning light, these divine messages remained sharp for days, sometimes years. A merchant might dream of a specific harbor where storms would strike, seeing the exact rocks and the color of the sky. Upon waking, he could describe the scene as if he'd stood there himself. The clarity extended beyond mere sight. True dreams brought all the senses alive. The dreamer might smell cypress burning at an altar, feel cold marble beneath bare feet, or hear the exact melody of a hymn they'd never learned. These weren't the shifting, impossible landscapes of ordinary sleep. They held together with the consistency of waking life, yet carried the unmistakable mark of divine origin, a quality that set them apart from both daily experience and common dreams. In mythology, not all dreams held the same weight. The false dreams that passed through the gates of ivory were particularly fragile things, dissolving like mist when morning arrived. These deceptive visions would slip away from memory almost immediately upon waking, leaving only the faintest impression that something had occurred during the night. Fleeting quality is part of their very nature. False dreams weren't meant to linger or take root in the waking mind. They scattered like shadows when touched by consciousness, their details becoming impossible to grasp, no matter how vivid they had seemed moments before. A person might wake knowing they had dreamed something significant, yet find themselves unable to recall even the simplest detail. This ephemeral quality served as a natural protection, since these dreams often contained misleading visions or impossible promises. Their rapid dissolution prevented mortals from dwelling on deceptions. The mind released them as easily as the hand releases smoke. While true dreams from the Gate of Horn would remain clear and memorable throughout the day, false dreams left nothing behind but a vague unease, a sense of something half remembered and already gone. Core idea: the Greeks understood that not all dreams carried the same weight. Those that came through the gates of ivory were false visions, beautiful perhaps, but ultimately deceptive. They might show a merchant finding gold in his garden, or a soldier returning home to find his enemies transformed into friends. These dreams dissolved with morning light, leaving nothing but confusion. Dreams from the Gates of Horn were different. They carried truth, though often wrapped in symbols that required careful unraveling. A dream of falling teeth might warn of coming loss. A vision of rising water could herald change approaching like a tide. The challenge lay in recognizing which gate had opened during sleep. This distinction shaped how people responded to their night visions. False dreams from ivory gates could lead to ruin if followed blindly. A man might abandon his fields after dreaming of distant treasures, only to find poverty waiting, but true dreams from horn gates. These deserved attention. They might reveal hidden illness before symptoms appeared, or warn of betrayal while trust still seemed solid. The Greeks developed methods to tell these dreams apart, watching for certain signs and patterns that marked authentic visions. The interpretation itself became an art, practiced by those who understood the language of sleep. In the palace of Olympus, where divine politics unfolded with the weight of thunder, Hypnos found himself drawn into a dangerous game. Hera, queen of the gods, approached the gentle deity of sleep with a request that made even his drowsy nature sharpen with concern. She wanted Zeus, her husband and king of all gods, to fall into deep slumber. The request carried enormous risk. Zeus wielded lightning and commanded storms. His anger could shake the cosmos itself. Yet Hera's determination burned bright, and she offered Hypnos rewards that spoke to his quiet nature: protection, honor, and recognition among the Olympians. Hypnos moved through the golden halls like mist over water. His presence alone made the air heavy with drowsiness. When he found Zeus, the king of gods sat upon his throne, eagle-eyed and alert. But even the mightiest of immortals could not resist the touch of sleep himself. Hypnos released his power gently, like twilight claiming the sky. Zeus's eyelids grew heavy, his grip on his thunderbolt loosened. The Stormbringer's head tilted forward, and divine consciousness slipped away into the realm of dreams. For a brief moment, the ruler of Olympus was vulnerable, lost in slumber while Hera pursued her schemes. When Zeus stirred from his enchanted slumber, the air itself seemed to tremble. His eyes opened slowly at first, then widened as realization dawned. The king of the gods had been deceived, made vulnerable by sleep's gentle touch. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his throne, and thunder rumbled in the distance without a cloud in sight. The deception cut deep. While he had dreamed peacefully, unaware of the world beyond his closed eyelids, events had unfolded without his knowledge or consent. For a being who commanded the heavens and watched over mortal affairs, this forced blindness was intolerable. His jaw clenched as he pieced together what had transpired during his unnatural rest. Lightning flickered in his eyes as his rage built. The very idea that someone had dared to cast sleep upon him, to render the mightiest of the gods as helpless as any mortal in slumber. It was an insult that demanded answer. His voice, when it finally came, started as a low growl that grew into a roar that shook Mount Olympus itself. Birds fled from the mountainside, and lesser deities hurried away from his presence. Zeus was awake, and his fury would not rest until justice was served. Hypnos flew through the cosmos, his usual gentle drift transformed into desperate flight. Behind him, Zeus's lightning crackled and thunder rolled across the heavens. The god of sleep had nowhere to hide in the bright realms where Zeus held dominion. His only hope lay in the one place even Zeus feared to enter. At the edge of creation, where light fails and darkness begins its eternal reign, stood the cavern of Nyx. The primordial goddess of night watched her son approach, and she opened her star-scattered cloak to receive him. When Zeus arrived at her threshold, his pursuit ended. Even in his wrath, he would not cross into Nyx's domain. She who gave birth to sleep and death, fate and doom, stood beyond even his power. In her embrace, Hypnos found the only sanctuary in all existence where Zeus's anger could not reach. The night goddess Nyx held a power that even Zeus respected, When darkness fell across the world, it belonged to her alone. She dwelt in a cave at the edge of creation, where light had never reached, and from this place she watched over all that moved in shadow. Zeus, who commanded thunder and ruled from Mount Olympus, understood certain boundaries. The stories tell of times when he chose patience over confrontation when Nyx was involved. Once, when she shielded someone who had angered him, Zeus held back his lightning. The king of gods knew that some forces existed before his reign began, and night was among the oldest. Nyx moved through the world wrapped in dark veils, bringing sleep and dreams in her wake. Her children included not just Hypnos and his brother Thanatos, but also the Fates themselves. She carried the weight of primordial authority, the kind that comes from being present when the cosmos first took shape. In the divine hierarchy of Greek myth, raw power sometimes mattered less than ancient precedents, and Nyx's dominion over night remained absolute. Even the Olympians waited for dawn rather than challenge her directly. The gods rarely offered rewards without reason, and Hypnos had earned his through an act of exceptional courage. When Hera needed someone to lull Zeus into deep slumber during the Trojan War, she turned to the god of sleep. The task was dangerous. Zeus had nearly destroyed Hypnos once before for a similar deception, but this time, Hera offered something irresistible: the hand of Pasithea, youngest of the Graces. Pasithea embodied everything gentle and calming. Among her sisters who danced eternally on Olympus, she moved with particular grace, her presence bringing peace to troubled hearts. For Hypnos, who dwelt in the shadowy cave where day never reached, she represented a different kind of beauty, one that complemented his own quiet nature. Their union was unlike the passionate affairs that often consumed the gods, where other divine marriages blazed with drama and conflict. Hypnos and Pasithea found harmony in gentleness. She brought light without harshness to his realm of perpetual twilight. He offered her rest from the endless celebrations of Olympus. Together they created a balance between waking grace and sleeping peace, between the joy of consciousness and the restoration of dreams. The goddess Pasithea embodied grace itself, moving through the divine realm with a gentleness that seemed to slow time. When she married Hypnos, the pairing felt inevitable. She was one of the Charites, those deities of charm and beauty who brought ease to both mortals and immortals alike. Their marriage represented something deeper than love alone. Where Hypnos brought sleep to weary souls, Pasithea brought the relaxation that allowed sleep to arrive. She was the loosening of tight shoulders, the softening of clenched jaws, the gradual release of the day's tensions. Together, they created the conditions for true rest. In artistic depictions, Pasithea often appeared at her husband's side, her presence adding a layer of serenity to his already peaceful domain. While Hypnos controlled the mechanism of sleep itself, she influenced its quality. The difference between restless slumber and deep, restorative sleep often came down to her gentle touch. Their children inherited this dual nature. Some became spirits of rest and recuperation, others guardians of meditation and calm. The family formed a pantheon of tranquility, each member contributing to the great work of bringing peace to both the mortal and divine worlds, a legacy that touched every living thing that ever closed its eyes in weariness. Endymion spent his days wandering the hills of Caria with his flocks, moving between meadows as the seasons changed. His beauty was unlike anything the mountain paths had seen before. Even the wild deer would pause to watch him pass, and eagles circled lower than usual when he rested beneath the pines. The other shepherds spoke of him in hushed tones at the markets, His face carried the kind of perfection that made people forget their words mid-sentence. Dark hair fell across his shoulders, and his eyes held the color of deep mountain pools. When he played his pipes in the evening, the notes seemed to hang in the air longer than they should. He lived simply, sleeping under stars and waking with the dawn. His sheep knew his voice from across the valleys, following him through passages only he seemed to know. The lonely life suited him, while others sought the bustle of towns and festivals. Endymion preferred the quiet company of his animals and the rhythm of the hills. In those days before his fate changed, he was just a shepherd of extraordinary beauty, unknown to the gods who would soon take notice of him. In the quiet hills of ancient Greece, there lived a shepherd named Endymion, whose beauty caught the attention of Selene, the moon goddess. Each night, as she guided her silver chariot across the sky, she would pause to gaze upon him sleeping in the meadows. The sight of his peaceful face stirred something deep within her immortal heart. Selene found herself returning to that same hillside night after night, drawn by a longing she had never known before. The moon's light would linger longer over Endymion's resting place, bathing him in a gentle glow that seemed almost like a caress. Other mortals might glimpse her radiance from afar, but only he received the full warmth of her celestial presence. Unable to bear the thought of losing him to age or death, Selene approached Zeus with an unusual request. She asked that Endymion be granted eternal youth, preserved forever in the bloom of his beauty. Zeus agreed, but with a condition. Endymion would remain eternally young only in eternal sleep. And so the shepherd dreamed on, forever beautiful, forever unconscious, while Selene continued her nightly visits, content to love him in his endless slumber. In the mountains of ancient Greece, there lived a shepherd named Endymion, whose beauty caught the attention of the gods themselves. Some say he was a king, others a simple shepherd, but all accounts agree on one thing: he possessed a beauty that seemed almost divine in its perfection. The moon goddess Selene saw him one night as he slept beneath the stars, and she fell deeply in love. Night after night, she would pause her silver chariot in the sky just to gaze upon his peaceful face. Her light would caress his sleeping form, and she would whisper words of love that only the night winds could hear. But mortal beauty fades, and mortal life ends. Selene could not bear the thought of watching Endymion grow old and die. She went to Zeus, ruler of the gods, and begged for a solution. Zeus, perhaps moved by her devotion or simply amused by the request, offered a choice: Endymion could have eternal youth, but only in eternal sleep. The choice was made. In a cave on Mount Latmus, Endymion sleeps forever, never aging, never waking, while each night Selene visits him, her love as constant as his dreams are endless. In the mountains of Caria, a shepherd named Endymion caught the attention of Selene, the moon goddess. She fell deeply in love with the beautiful youth, visiting him each night as he slept beneath the stars. Her silver light would wash over his sleeping form while she whispered words of devotion that only dreams could carry. The goddess faced a terrible truth: mortals age and die, while gods remain eternal. She couldn't bear the thought of watching Endymion grow old and slip away from her. So she went to Zeus with an unusual request. She asked that Endymion be granted eternal sleep, where he would remain forever young, forever beautiful, forever hers. Zeus agreed to this strange bargain. Endymion fell into an endless slumber, his body preserved in perfect youth. He would never wake again, but within that sleep, he lived a different kind of life. In dreams, he wandered through silver meadows with Selene, spoke with her, loved her. the boundary between sleep and death blurred for him. He existed in a realm where consciousness took new forms, where the moon's light became touch, where night stretched into eternity. His dreams became his only reality, more vivid than any waking moment could have been. In the quiet hours when darkness settled over the world, Selene would guide her silver chariot across the heavens. The moon goddess moved through her nightly journey with a purpose beyond illuminating the earth below. Her path always curved toward a hidden cave on the island of Lesbos, where Endymion lay in his eternal sleep. The story began when Selene first glimpsed the young shepherd sleeping beneath the stars. His beauty stopped her mid-flight, and she descended from her celestial route to gaze upon him. Some say she asked Zeus to grant him eternal youth and endless sleep so she could visit him forever. Others believe Endymion himself chose this fate, preferring dreams of the goddess to a mortal life. Night after night, Selene would slip away from her duties to spend precious moments beside the sleeping shepherd. She would trace moonbeams across his unchanging face and whisper stories of the cosmos he would never consciously hear. Their love existed in this strange space between waking and sleeping, between mortality and divinity. While the world slumbered below, the goddess found her own solace in these visits, creating a romance that could only flourish in the realm of dreams and moonlight. Hypnos had a particular way of bringing sleep to the world. Unlike his brother Thanatos, whose touch meant the end of all things, Hypnos moved through the night with extraordinary care. His wings barely stirred the air as he passed over sleeping mortals, and his footsteps left no mark on the earth below. The god of sleep carried with him a horn filled with drowsy vapors, from which he would pour just the right amount of rest for each person. Some received deep, dreamless slumber that would restore their weary bodies. Others were given lighter sleep, where the mind could wander through the paths of dreams his son Morpheus would craft. He never forced sleep upon anyone with violence or sudden shock. Instead, he would stand quietly beside them, letting the weight of the day gradually pull their eyelids closed. Even the other gods respected how Hypnos worked. When Zeus himself grew tired after hurling thunderbolts across the sky, Hypnos would approach with the same gentle manner he showed to the humblest shepherd. His touch was always soft, like evening mist settling over a quiet valley, bringing rest without fear. In Greek mythology, dreams weren't just fleeting images that played behind closed eyelids. They existed as tangible places, complete realms that mortals visited each night. When someone drifted off to sleep, their spirit would actually travel through gates of horn and ivory, crossing into territories ruled by Morpheus and his brothers. These dream realms had their own geography and inhabitants. The Onoroi, the 1,000 dream spirits, lived there permanently, crafting experiences for visiting mortals. Some regions held prophetic visions, while others contained memories transformed into living scenes. Mortals might find themselves walking through recreated moments from their past, or witnessing events yet to come, all as real as their waking lives. The boundaries between these worlds were surprisingly thin. Heroes occasionally brought objects back from dreams, and divine messages delivered in sleep carried the same weight as those received while awake. When Penelope dreamed of her husband Odysseus, she was actually meeting some essence of him in that other world. When warriors received battle strategies in their sleep, they had genuinely consulted with gods in those distant territories. The dream realm operated by its own logic, where time flowed differently and the impossible became ordinary. In the quiet corners of Athens, philosophers would gather as twilight fell, speaking of sleep and consciousness in ways that blurred the boundaries between states of being. These thinkers saw something peculiar in how easily we accept the logic of dreams while sleeping, only to dismiss them upon waking. The comparison arose from observing how both states felt equally real in the moment of experience. A philosopher might walk through the agora by day, touching marble columns and hearing merchants call their wares. Then at night encounter Morpheus's visions with the same conviction of reality. Both experiences carried weight, both felt true while happening. This philosophical thread wove through discussions about the nature of perception itself. If the mind could create entire worlds during sleep that seemed as solid as daylight reality, what did this say about waking experience? The question lingered in their evening dialogues. Was the difference between sleeping and waking as clear as it seemed? Some suggested that just as Hypnos gently closed the eyes each night, perhaps he merely opened different ones. The boundary between his realm and the waking world might be thinner than most believed, with consciousness simply shifting between different ways of perceiving rather than between truth and illusion. Sleep and death were close companions in Greek thought. When someone fell asleep, their consciousness drifted away like smoke from a dying fire. This wasn't just metaphor. Consciousness itself was understood as something that came and went, never permanent. The soul might continue after death, yes, but the aware, thinking self that recognized faces and remembered yesterday's conversations, that flickered out each night and returned each morning, if it returned at all. Philosophers pondered this daily miracle. How strange that the person who closed their eyes at dusk wasn't quite the same one who opened them at dawn. In the underworld, shades wandered without full awareness, like sleepwalkers in an eternal twilight. They recognized nothing clearly, remembered only fragments. The dead drank from Lethe, the river of forgetfulness, and their consciousness dissolved like salt in water. Only the greatest heroes retained some measure of awareness in death, and even they existed as echoes of their living selves. This understanding shaped how people approached both sleep and death. Neither was an ending, exactly, but both marked a departure of the conscious self. The body remained, the soul perhaps endured, but that spark of present awareness, it was always just visiting. When darkness fell across the land, people understood that sleep was more than rest. It was a sacred release, a willing surrender to powers beyond mortal control. Each evening, as they prepared for bed, they performed small rituals, a whispered prayer to Hypnos, a drop of honey on the tongue, a sprig of poppy beneath the pillow. The act of closing one's eyes held deeper meaning. It was an offering of trust to the gods of night. To sleep was to place oneself in the hands of Hypnos and his sons, particularly Morpheus, who shaped the dreams that would come. This nightly surrender wasn't seen as weakness, but as participation in something divine. Priests taught that those who fought against sleep showed hubris. The body's natural descent into slumber was itself a form of worship, acknowledging the boundary between mortal consciousness and the realm of gods. Even the mightiest heroes had to yield to Hypnos each night. Their strength meant nothing in the face of his gentle touch. In this understanding, every person became equal in sleep. The wealthy merchant and the humble farmer both released their daily burdens when night arrived, entering the same sacred darkness where dreams waited. In Greek mythology, sleep was far more than simple rest. It represented a complete yielding of control, a state where mortals placed themselves entirely in the hands of divine forces. When someone drifted into slumber, they entered Hypnos's realm without defenses, without the sharp awareness that protected them during waking hours. This vulnerability made sleep both sacred and dangerous. Warriors who fell asleep on guard duty faced execution, not merely for negligence, but for abandoning their protective stance against the unknown. Yet every person had to make this surrender each night, trusting that they would wake again, that the gods would return them safely from that shadowy borderland. The rituals surrounding sleep reflected this understanding. Prayers were whispered before lying down, small offerings left beside beds. Parents sang specific hymns over sleeping children, weaving protective words around them. These weren't empty traditions, but acknowledgments of the faith required to close one's eyes and drift away, knowing that consciousness itself would slip from grasp. Even heroes struggled with this nightly submission. Achilles slept fitfully before battle, fighting against the pull of Hypnos. The mightiest warriors became as helpless as infants once sleep claimed them, equals in that strange democracy of The word hypnosis traces its roots back to Hypnos, the Greek god of sleep. When Scottish surgeon James Braid coined the term in the 1840s, he was searching for a name that captured the trance-like state he observed in his patients. He looked to Greek mythology and found Hypnos, whose very presence brought slumber to mortals and immortals alike. In the old stories, Hypnos lived in a cave where the river Lethe flowed, the river of forgetfulness. No sunlight reached this place, and poppies grew thick at the entrance. The god himself moved silently through the world, his wings barely stirring the air as he touched sleeping mortals with his horn or branch. The connection Braid saw wasn't just about sleep itself. It was about that strange borderland between waking and sleeping, where consciousness shifts and changes. Hypnos governed these twilight moments in Greek thought, the drowsy afternoon, the moment before dreams begin, the gentle descent into rest. Modern hypnosis borrowed more than just a name from this quiet deity. It borrowed the idea of a gentle transition, a guided journey into a different state of mind, where healing and change become possible. Just as Hypnos once guided both mortals and gods into realms of rest and restoration. The word morphology carries within it an echo of the dream shaper himself. Morpheus, son of Hypnos, moved through the sleeping world with a particular gift: he could take any human form. While his brothers brought visions of animals and objects, Morpheus specialized in people. He would slip into dreams wearing the faces of loved ones, strangers, or figures from memory. This ability to shift and change, to mold himself into different shapes, gave language a lasting gift. When early scholars needed a word to describe the study of form and structure, they reached back to Morpheus. His name, rooted in the Greek word for shape, became the foundation for how we talk about transformation itself. In the realm of sleep, Morpheus was the master craftsman. He didn't just appear in dreams. He constructed them, piece by piece, shaping each detail until the sleeper couldn't tell vision from reality. The faces he wore were perfect copies, down to the smallest gesture or familiar expression. Through him, the dead could speak again in dreams, and the distant could feel near. Today, when scientists study how things take their shape, whether languages, organisms, or crystals, they unknowingly invoke the name of this gentle deity who spent eternity perfecting the art of form itself. The year was 1804, and a German pharmacist named Friedrich Sertiner was working late in his laboratory, studying the properties of opium. After years of careful extraction and experimentation, he had isolated a crystalline compound that seemed to hold remarkable power over pain and consciousness. When he tested small amounts on himself and his friends, they experienced a peculiar floating sensation before drifting into deep, dreamless sleep. Surturner needed a name for his discovery. As he watched his test subjects slip peacefully into slumber, he thought of Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams who could appear in any form within sleeping minds. In mythology, Morpheus was one of the Unaroi, the 1,000 dream spirits who emerged each night from their cave beyond the western edge of the world. He was the most skilled of his brothers, able to perfectly mimic human forms in dreams, speaking with their voices and moving with their gestures. The connection felt right to Surturner. His compound seemed to carry people across that same threshold between waking and sleeping, between pain and peace. He named it morphine, forever linking modern medicine to the winged god who had guided mortals through their dreams for thousands of years. In the quiet hours when sleep takes hold, we find ourselves in the arms of Morpheus. This phrase has drifted through centuries, carrying with it the memory of the Greek god of dreams. Morpheus was one of the 1,000 sons of Hypnos, the god of sleep, and among all his brothers, he held a special gift. While his siblings could send simple visions or nightmares, Morpheus could craft perfect human forms in dreams. The word morph means form or shape in Greek, and this god lived up to his name. He could appear as anyone: a lost parent, a distant lover, a friend from childhood. His wings, dark and silent as those of his father, would carry him through the night to sleeping mortals. There, he would slip into their dreams and take on whatever human shape was needed for his message. When someone drifted into particularly deep sleep, they were said to be held in Morpheus's embrace. His presence meant dreams so vivid, they felt more real than waking life. Dreams were the boundaries between sleep and consciousness dissolved completely. In the quiet halls of museums, you might find them standing together, two winged figures carved from marble, their faces serene and almost identical. Hypnos and Thanatos, sleep and death, twin sons of night. The sculptors understood something about these brothers that words sometimes struggled to capture. Their wings spread in similar arcs, feathers detailed with the same careful attention. But if you look closely, you notice the differences. Hypnos often holds poppies or a horn dripping with sleep-bringing liquid, while Thanatos might carry an inverted torch or simply stand with empty hands. The artists knew these brothers worked together, arriving at life's most fragile moments. On ancient funeral monuments, they appear as young men lifting fallen warriors. Sleep cradles the head while death supports the feet, and together they carry souls away from battlefields. The marble makes their partnership eternal sleep's temporary embrace, and death's permanent one, rendered in stone that outlasts both states. Some sculptures show them as children, which feels right somehow. Brothers who never aged, who existed before time, began counting days. Their mother night must have held them both when the world was new, teaching them their gentle work. The Renaissance brought a quiet revival of old imagery that had been sleeping for centuries. Artists in Florence and Rome began painting Hypnos and Morpheus again, their forms emerging from marble and canvas after a long absence. In earlier times, these deities had appeared on pottery and temple walls. Their wings spread gently, poppies scattered at their feet. Medieval artists had largely forgotten them, turning instead to different symbols for sleep and death. But as scholars rediscovered ancient texts and fragments of old sculptures, the winged brothers found their way back into art. Botticelli wove them into allegorical scenes where sleep bordered on transformation. Other painters showed Hypnos pouring his drowsy waters, or Morpheus shaping dreams from wisps of shadow. The old symbols returned to the inverted torch that meant consciousness dimming, the horn from which false dreams poured, the gates of ivory and horn. These weren't exact copies of ancient depictions. Renaissance artists gave the sleep gods fuller forms, more human faces, caught between the divine and mortal worlds. They understood something their predecessors knew, that sleep and dreams deserved their own careful imagery, their own gentle patrons watching over the threshold between waking and rest. Morpheus possessed a nature that defied fixed form. While other deities maintained consistent appearances, the god of dreams existed in constant transformation. His very essence was fluidity itself, moving between shapes like water, taking the form of its container. In the realm of sleep, Morpheus appeared differently to each dreamer. One moment he might wear the face of a beloved friend. The next he could become a stranger from a distant memory. This shape-shifting wasn't mere trickery, it was fundamental to his divine purpose. Dreams themselves shift and change, and their master reflected this mercurial quality. Artists who attempted to capture Morpheus in stone or paint faced an impossible task. How could anyone render a god whose appearance changed with each breath? Some depicted him with wings that seemed to dissolve at the edges. Others showed multiple overlapping faces emerging from shadow. The most honest representations simply showed empty space surrounded by sleeping forms, acknowledging that the true face of the dream god remained forever unknowable. This formless quality made Morpheus both everywhere and nowhere in the sleeping world. He could be all the figures in a dream simultaneously, or none of them, existing instead as the very fabric of the dream itself. The name Morpheus carries meaning that stretches back thousands of years. In Greek mythology, Morpheus was the god of dreams, one of the 1,000 sons of Hypnos, the personification of sleep. His role was specific and remarkable. While his brothers might send dreams of animals or objects, Morpheus specialized in taking human form within dreams. He could appear as anyone, mimicking their appearance, voice, and mannerisms with perfect accuracy. This divine shapeshifter lived with his family in a cave near the shores of the river Lethe, where forgetfulness flowed. The cave had 2 gates, one of horn for true dreams, one of ivory for false ones. From this dark sanctuary, Morpheus would fly out each night on silent wings, entering the dreams of mortals across the Greek world. His very name comes from the Greek word morph, meaning form or shape. Ancient texts describe him as a master craftsman of illusion, creating entire dream worlds that felt completely real to the sleeper. He could construct scenarios so vivid that upon waking, people would struggle to distinguish what they had dreamed from what they had actually experienced. A confusion between constructed reality and truth that would echo through stories for millennia to come. The philosophers of Greece spent countless hours debating the nature of reality. In marble courtyards and shaded groves, they wondered whether the world we see is truly what exists, or merely shadows dancing on a cave wall. This question became especially complex when they considered dreams. Every night, people experienced entire worlds that felt completely real. They spoke with loved ones who had passed away, visited places they'd never seen, and lived through events that defied the laws of nature. Yet when dawn broke, these experiences vanished like mist. The boundary between waking and sleeping seemed both obvious and impossibly thin. Some believed dreams were messages from the gods, windows into divine truth. Others thought they were meaningless echoes of daily life. But everyone agreed on one thing: While dreaming, the dreamer rarely questioned what they saw. In that state, the impossible became ordinary. The dead walked again, and time flowed in strange patterns. This puzzle fascinated those who studied the mind and soul. If dreams could feel so real while we experienced them, what did that say about our waking hours? Perhaps reality itself was more fluid than anyone imagined, especially in those twilight moments when sleep began to take hold. In the realm of sleep, Morpheus held a unique position among the Onroi, the 1,000 dream spirits who served his father Hypnos. While his brothers could only create dreams of animals or inanimate objects, Morpheus possessed the extraordinary ability to shape human forms within dreams. He could replicate any person perfectly, capturing their voice, their mannerisms, even their smallest gestures. This mastery over human appearance made Morpheus the most skilled of all dream weavers. When mortals experienced vivid dreams, where they conversed with loved ones or encountered strangers who seemed completely real, they were witnessing Morpheus at work. His artistry was so refined that dreamers often couldn't distinguish between his creations and waking reality. The phenomenon of becoming aware within a dream while still asleep mirrors this divine craftsmanship. Just as Morpheus could consciously mold and direct the dream experience, some mortals discovered they could recognize his handiwork while still within it. This awareness didn't break the dream, but transformed it, allowing the dreamer to participate in the shaping rather than merely observe. In this way, the boundary between divine dream maker and mortal dreamer became surprisingly thin, suggesting that Morpheus's gift might echo somewhere deep within human consciousness itself. In Greek mythology, dreams served as messages from the gods, arriving through gates of ivory and horn. The gate of ivory released false dreams, while the gate of horn permitted true visions to pass into the sleeping world. Kings and warriors would sleep in sacred spaces, hoping for divine guidance before battles or important decisions. Morpheus, the winged god of dreams, could take any human form. He would appear in sleepers' minds wearing familiar faces, delivering prophecies through the voices of loved ones or respected elders. His brothers helped craft these visions. Isolus shaped animals and dreams, while Phantasos created landscapes and objects that carried meaning. The oracle at Delphi wasn't the only place where mortals sought divine wisdom. Dream incubation became a practice where people would sleep in temples, particularly those dedicated to Asclepius, the god of healing. After ritual purification and offerings, they would lie on special beds, waiting for healing visions or answers to their troubles. Even heroes relied on dream prophecy. Penelope's dreams of eagles and geese revealed truths about Odysseus's return. Agamemnon received his fateful battle plans through deceptive dreams sent by Zeus himself, proof that even divine messages could lead mortals astray. In certain temples across the Greek world, people would sleep within sacred walls, hoping for visions that might heal their bodies or answer their deepest questions. These sanctuaries, dedicated to Asclepius, the god of medicine, welcomed those seeking divine guidance through dreams. The practice followed careful rituals. Visitors would purify themselves with sacred water, make offerings, and then lie down on stone benches in the temple's innermost chambers. As night fell and silence settled over the sanctuary, they waited for sleep to carry them into the realm where gods and mortals could meet. The priests understood that dreams held special significance when they occurred in holy places. They believed that Asclepius himself would visit the sleeping pilgrims, sometimes appearing as a bearded physician. sometimes as a sacred serpent gliding through the darkness. These divine encounters weren't random. They were conversations between the human soul and the healing powers of the universe. When morning came, the dreamers would share their visions with the temple priests, who helped interpret the symbols and prescribe treatments based on what had been revealed. Many left stone tablets describing their experiences, testimonies to nights when the boundary between waking and sleeping dissolved into something far more meaningful. In the quiet corners of human experience, where consciousness fades and the world dissolves into darkness, sleep has always needed a face. The ancient Greeks gave this universal experience to Hypnos, a gentle deity who lived in a cave where the river Lethe flowed. No sunlight touched this place, no rooster crowed, and even the entrance was guarded by poppies that swayed in perpetual twilight. Hypnos was unlike the other gods who demanded temples and sacrifices. He moved silently through the world, his wings barely stirring the air as he passed over mortals and immortals alike. When he touched them with his horn of sleep-inducing liquid, or simply brushed them with his wings, they would drift away from their troubles, their wars, their loves and losses. His twin brother, Thanatos, represented death, but while death was final, Hypnos offered a temporary escape that all beings craved. Even Zeus, king of the gods, could not resist when Hypnos worked his quiet magic. This power over sleep made Hypnos both necessary and feared, a deity who could render the mightiest warrior as helpless as a newborn child, yet also grant the sweetest relief from pain and sorrow. Hypnos embodied something deeper than just the god of sleep. He represented a pattern that appeared throughout their stories, the gentle force that brings rest to all living things. While other gods commanded storms or started wars, Hypnos moved through the world with a different kind of power. His influence touched everyone equally, from the mightiest hero to the humblest shepherd. This pattern showed up in how Greek stories portrayed sleep itself. It wasn't just about closing your eyes at night. Sleep became a bridge between different states of being, between consciousness and unconsciousness, between life and something close to death. Hypnos carried this duality wherever he appeared in their tales. He could bring peaceful rest to a weary traveler, or he could cast an entire army into slumber at the height of battle. The way Hypnos appeared in art and poetry revealed this broader meaning to artists, often showed him with wings, suggesting the lightness of sleep's arrival. His gentle expression spoke to the mercy he offered, that brief escape from the struggles of mortal existence. Through Hypnos, sleep became more than a biological need. It became a small taste of divine peace. In the realm of sleep, Morpheus held a unique position among his 1,000 brothers. While others might send abstract visions or shapeless impressions through the night, Morpheus crafted dreams with the precision of a master artisan. He was the dream god who took human form, who could become anyone: a lost father, a distant lover, a feared enemy. His gift lay in perfect mimicry, in capturing not just appearance, but the essence of those he portrayed. The stories Morpheus wove in dreams were more than simple illusions. When he appeared to a grieving widow as her late husband, he knew every gesture, every inflection of voice that would make the encounter feel real. In the dreams of kings, he might take the shape of trusted advisors, delivering messages that felt as authentic as any waking counsel. This wasn't mere trickery. It was an art form that required deep understanding of human nature. His workshop was said to be filled with countless masks and forms, each one a perfect replica of someone who had lived or might live. Through these dreams, mortals experienced reunions impossible in waking life, received guidance from those long gone, or confronted fears given human shape. Morpheus understood that the most powerful dreams were those that felt completely, utterly real. Sleep arrives each night without regard for who lies waiting. In the realm of Hypnos, the god of sleep makes no distinction between those who rest on soft cushions or cold stone. His gentle touch falls equally upon all mortals, drawing them into his domain where social standing dissolves into darkness. The wealthy merchant counting gold and the shepherd watching stars both surrender to the same inevitable pull. When Hypnos spreads his wings across the land, he brings the same gift to every household. The king's elaborate bedchamber offers no special protection from nightmares, just as the beggar's doorway provides no barrier to pleasant dreams. This equality extends even to the heroes of myth. Achilles, despite his near invincibility, needed sleep as desperately as any common soldier. The mighty Heracles himself fell under Hypnos' power, proving that even demigods must yield to this universal need. In sleep's kingdom, all mortals become equally vulnerable, equally restored. The boundaries that define waking life fade away. Rich and poor, strong and weak, all enter the same shadowland where Hypnos rules with an even hand, offering rest to every weary soul who seeks his embrace. The great halls of Olympus would grow quiet when night fell across the world. Even Zeus, wielder of thunderbolts and ruler of all divine realms, would find his eyes growing heavy as darkness spread. The gods possessed extraordinary powers, commanded the elements, and shaped the fates of mortals. Yet they too felt the gentle pull of sleep. Hypnos understood this better than anyone. He moved through the celestial palaces with a peculiar authority that came not from strength or fear, but from necessity. When he spread his wings, even the mightiest immortals would feel drowsiness settling into their bones. Apollo might resist for a while, trying to keep the sun's journey steady, but eventually even he would succumb. This divine need for rest revealed something fundamental about the nature of existence in Greek mythology. Sleep wasn't merely a mortal weakness, it was woven into the fabric of all consciousness. The gods dreamed just as mortals did, though their dreams could reshape mountains or birth new constellations. In those quiet hours when even Olympus slumbered, the boundary between divine and mortal grew thin, united by this shared surrender to Hypnos and his gentle dominion. In the quiet hours when sleep takes hold, Morpheus works with the dedication of a master craftsman. While his father Hypnos brings the weight of slumber, Morpheus shapes what unfolds behind closed eyes. He moves through sleeping minds with the precision of a sculptor, forming dreams from fragments of memory and emotion. His workshop exists in that strange space between waking and sleeping, where thoughts become images and feelings take shape. Here, Morpheus creates dreams as an artist creates paintings, each one unique, each one carrying its own truth. Some nights he weaves simple scenes of daily life. Other nights he constructs elaborate visions that speak in symbols and hidden meanings. The other owner, Roy, his 1,000 brothers, handled different aspects of the dream realm, but Morpheus alone specializes in human forms, in faces and voices that feel completely real until the moment of waking. He understands the subtle art of making dreams believable, of creating experiences so vivid that sleepers forget they're sleeping at all. Night after night, he continues his work, neither judge nor prophet, but simply an artist whose canvas is the sleeping mind, whose paint is made of memories, and whose masterpieces vanish with the deep. Night after night, he continues his work, neither judge nor prophet, but simply an artist whose canvas is the sleeping mind, whose paint is made of memories, and whose masterpieces vanish with the dawn.